You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast, the Blair Witch franchise, the Eduardo Sanchez interview.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, man. How's it going?
I'm great. Thank you so much for doing this. So, like, when we look back at the Blair Witch, like the early kind of early seeds of it, what was your first inspiration behind it? You know, what was that trigger point to go, hey, that this will be a cool subject to talk about?
Well, it was Dan Myrick and my partner and I had we were just in film school and we were broke like most film students, and we were just hanging out over a weekend and we just started talking about horror movies. I think we had gone to like a free screening of the Nightmare on Elm Street movie with Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold.
Yes.
Came back and we were like, man, what happened to like the scary horror movies?
Yeah.
All those horror movies seem to be kind of campy and just kind of ridiculous, and this was like the early '90s, when just that the golden age of the '80s had like run its course.
Yeah.
And it seemed like people weren't really interested in horror movies anymore, at least the general audiences, So we were like, just thinking about what scared us, like what would we like to see? Like what kind of horror movie would we like to see? And we loved all those kind of pseudo documentaries, like Chariot of the Gods and Legend of Boggy Creek, and that show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy was like a big kind of a point of reference for us. And we went out and rented a bunch of those VHS tapes and watched a bunch of them and just kind of thought, man, I wonder if you could make a movie that kind of felt like a documentary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where Blair Witch came from. Just the idea of like this documentary film team going somewhere and then their footage being found. We were saying that footage was going to be found, 15 years later or whatever. But we were like, we couldn't afford to go back that far back in time. So we just decided to say, all right, it's just going to be, 2 or 3 years ago. So, and that's where kind of Blair Witch became, we call it the Woods movie. And that's all it was. It was just this basic idea of like a documentary film crew, with a camera on their shoulders, like getting lost in the woods with this, malevolent kind of, entity chasing them and doing all kinds of shit to them.
Yeah. It's certainly, and this has been discussed before. It certainly kind of resonated with the audience in a huge way at the time. And something I kind of went on record with on our podcast discussions was about, in part of what I believe was part of its success was the amount of backstory that you guys had put into it. I come from an acting background, and I was saying to the guys, this wouldn't be able to be pulled off with the amount of kind of backstory that you guys had to kind of drip feed to your actors throughout that course of time. And I'm just wondering how much did you guys have to go into that backstory, and how much time did it kind of take to kind of plot all of that kind of stuff out?
The backstory was just basically almost like on a need to know, we developed it up to a point where we needed it to be developed, and then we would just kind of use it until we needed to develop it more. So the first thing was just basically like, what is this legend? Like, is it a witch, a sorcerer? What the hell is it? And we were like, well, it's going to be in Maryland, so it would have to be a witch. We're close enough. There were some witch stories around here, and there were, we're kind of close to Salem. We're like at least in the same, vicinity, and where all the witch trials happened. So we were like, okay, this is a witch, a woman who was, basically killed for being a witch. And then the town, was cursed, basically. Yeah. So we just kind of started with that, and then built up that basic information, and built up, like what date, just the dates, and then a little bit of the we're like, all right, around every 50 years something weird happens, So the first step was just for shooting. Like what does Heather need to know?
Yeah.
And Heather was the only one that knew anything about the Blair Witch. Like the other guys, we didn't give any information to. Like we were like, okay, this is you tell the guys what this is.
Yeah.
On a need to know basis, you know what I mean? So we gave her I think it was probably 2 sheets, 2 papers worth of, of information, a lot of dates, and then we were like, look, you don't have to be like an expert on it, but this is what you're doing your documentary on, so you should be able to answer just about everything in this, in these paper if you need to. It's just backstory for you to fill in when you need to.
Sure.
So. And then, so we shot with that kind of, and that took, I think, between all of us, Ben Rock, who was ended up being our production designer, also helped us in pre-production, and he helped a lot, kind of putting the mythology together. And I think that it took us, probably about 6 months, 9 months. We had to go from the general skeleton to go to the fleshed out, version of it. And then we kind of, left it alone until we started doing the edit, and whatever information we needed, we kind of filled it in. And then the next step was the website. We launched a website in June of 1998, and so there's a lot of questions that we had in the mythology. So. I was the webmaster, so I had the most time. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. I was the only one that was single.
Yeah.
Of the 5 guys that were working full time on it, and so I would edit at night. I would take shifts with Dan, and then I would just work on the website during the day while everybody was in the office. And so I started developing all the details, all the. The names of all the kids that Rustin Park killed. Exactly how many kids did he kill, and when, and when was he hung, and kind of just filling in as much information as for all the stuff for the the website, just for people to know. And then it just kept developing. Once we sold the film, the Oni Press came in, did some comic books, and
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of, continued to pull from the mythology. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like on a much smaller scale, like the Star Wars mythology. Keeps growing and keeps adding and things, and as the world kind of continues. So.
Yeah, I got a copy of the dossier that was released, the book, and obviously that goes into a bit more detail, and a lot of that you could see was an extension of the Curse of documentary that kind of...
Yeah, it was all... Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's like we had this... We had to build this mythology as a foundation for all these things. And at first it was just a movie. We were like, okay, it's a movie. Then we realized, wait, we don't have any money, but we can maybe promote it on a website. So we started the website, and then the mythology grew for that. And then when Artisan bought the movie, they were like, can we do some other stuff? And we're like, yeah, we could probably do a book, and we could do a TV special, and comic books, of course. So for every time we went out, we kind of expanded it a little more.
Yeah, and just touching on something as well, the global success of the Blair Witch, was also due to the marketing that surrounded it, and obviously the website is also part of that. How much were you actually involved with the actual marketing of the movie itself? Did you guys have much sway on that, or?
Well, we like I said, we had the website before Artisan bought us, at least like half a year before Sundance.
Okay.
And so we had, we were kind of doing our own marketing. We had a poster that looks very close to what they ended up with. We had this website, and when they bought us, they shut that website down, and then they built their own website, which was basically almost the same exact website as mine, except a little more. I didn't have very good skills, so mine was very simple and kind of rudimentary, and they kind of just laid it out in a different way and had obviously better people building it. But they basically followed the same structure of our website. And then and they were very collaborative. Like, that's one thing about Artisan is like they were just, John Hageman and Amrit Jones, who were over there as the marketing people. They were very, very open to like sending us, cuts of trailers, and we knew immediately. I mean, the fact that they had bought the film, like we were like, okay, because everybody's now in hindsight was like, wow, that was so great that Artisan bought it, and they beat all the odds of buying. I'm like, no, nobody else was really interested. I don't know if I think maybe we would have gotten an offer from somebody else at Sundance, but I don't know, because it was just such a weird movie. So you had to pick this. The studio had to be this really weird kind of this kind of unique studio, and they were very unique with the marketing. They let us be, part of it as much as we wanted to be. And then for the Curse of the Blair Witch, they were like, "Are you going to, we have a partnership with Sci-Fi Channel, and we do like a 1 hour thing." We were like, "Wow, it would be great, a documentary about Witch, and use a lot of footage that we didn't use in the movie, the cut." In the original cut. So and so for us it was just kind of like, and the same thing when D.A. Stern got involved for the book. A lot of conference calls, but also we just got lucky, and we got a lot of very talented people around the idea. And then also, like I said before, it's like Artisan as a company was like perfectly structured to take advantage of a quirky, kind of weird experimental movie like this one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of good people, and a lot of our original ideas, but then a lot of new, kind of directions taken by, new talent.
Sure. So, like, looking back at the movie now, is there anything that you look at that you would have done differently or would have changed at all, or?
There's always little bits, I think, that you go back and change in your films, but no, I think it is what it is, It's unbelievable how raw the movie is, and how like it looks exactly what it's supposed to be, like what it's supposed to be. It's like the most unpolished. It's the most unpolished, theatrically distributed movie probably ever. So so it's just amazing that we got away with it.
Yeah, sure.
And we were the only people that would have done it. Like, at least people like us, like indie filmmakers who had nothing to lose. I mean, I just couldn't imagine, unless you have like a really huge career and you have a bulletproof career, any other filmmaker like taking the chance that we did because we, it could have been, we joked about this all the time. We're like, man, we're either making like something that's really cool, or it's going to be like a joke fest. Like, it's just going to be like, what the hell are these people doing? And, they expected us to believe this shit, and this stick men from the, like, what a cheap ass movie. And, so we were always on that, we were always living in fear that, that this was not going to work, as you always do when you're a filmmaker. You're always kind of fearful of the film just not working the way you thought it was going to work. But especially something like this, which is like there was no barometer. There's no way to like say, well, this is the way this movie did it, and that's the way we should do it. You know what I mean? There wasn't any precedent, and I know that if you're a horror expert, of Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
But we hadn't heard of Cannibal Holocaust until after Sundance. Somebody sent us a VHS tape. So that movie was, it was banned in the United States, and it kind of made the rounds, on VHS when I was in high school. But I never saw it. It didn't make the rounds at my school, and Dan's school either. So, and we were very fortunate, because I think that if we had seen Cannibal Holocaust, I think that would have probably been the end of the Blair Witch idea, because we would have been like, well, why do a copy of the movie? You know what I mean? And so when we watched Cannibal Holocaust, we were pretty much amazed by, just the similarities in the idea, especially because it was much closer to our original idea of what Blair Witch was going to be, where we were going to have the footage be analyzed like they did in Cannibal Holocaust. like we were constantly going to be going back to the editing room like they did.
Sure.
But yeah, man, it was just kind of one of those things where, we were just lucky. We were uninformed, we were uninformed horror people,
That's often always part of what makes a good film, though. You don't necessarily need to be an expert in the field, just kind of have that resonance of a really good story to kind of play with,
Yeah, and it sometimes helps. Like, I mean, I love horror films. Some of my favorite films are horror films, but I never really had a favorite genre. And really for me, like probably comedies and action films are probably my favorite genre. At least when I was younger, or Steven Spielberg movies and Star Wars and kind of the basic Smoking the Bandit kind of popular movies. But I never considered myself a horror filmmaker until we did Blair Witch, and then I think the idea that I was not this like student of horror, and I think Dan was the same way. It's like it let us make this outrageous assumption about this movie's actually going to work. You know what I mean? Where maybe somebody who actually knew a little bit more about what they were doing would have been like, nah, dude. Cannibal Holocaust was already done. It was banned. It almost destroyed the film. It basically destroyed the filmmaker's career.
Yeah.
So but and I think also moving forward in my career, like the idea that like I'm not this really seasoned horror scholar. I mean, I watch a lot of horror movies now, but I never consider myself an expert. And I think that's helped me just kind of come at horror from a slightly different direction than a lot of the people that that were just strictly mostly on a horror diet as kids.
Yeah. Something that you touched on earlier was the countless kind of footage that you guys had to play with. When you were, cutting and editing the thing together. Some of it made its way onto Curse. Would you ever consider revisiting any of that kind of footage and maybe set up like a bit of a school or a guide on how to create a found footage film, kind of based on that stuff?
Well, I mean, I would love to revisit it. Like there's a longer version of the movie that Dan and I edited. Because we basically started with a much longer version and then just kept whittling it down. And we had like a 2.5 hour version that we knew was an hour too long, but we just wanted to see if it was the first public screening of it. And there's no copies of it left. Like there's, we couldn't find anything in the Haxon archive. It's probably at artists' offices somewhere, but I even count on that. So. I said that a couple of months ago on a podcast, and the people started like a petition to like, and I said, look, if Lionsgate, who now owns the franchise, gives me permission and gives me the technical ability to go, gives me access to the material, I would love to go back and re-edit like a longer version of Blair Witch, and I've always fantasized about like. Actually going back and finishing like all the stuff that we shot for the phase 2. And it'd be really interesting almost like to do that cut of the movie, you know what I mean? Like the original cut that Dan and I had in mind, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so and then as far as a school, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I would love to do like a workshop, but I don't know how many people want to really know how to do found movies these days. I think that until the next like found footage kind of spark happens, I think it doesn't seem very popular right now.
Yeah, there is that consensus, isn't there? But there are still some that still kind of do well. That have done well. Like, I mean. Do you have what do you think of what's your personal view of the current found footage phenomena today? I mean,
well, I think that it's a little bit played out. You know what I mean? I think that there's a certain audience member. I think that's the reason why Blair Witch, the new one, didn't do quite as well as they thought it was going to do. And I think it still did well. I mean, it was a very low budget movie.
Yeah.
But it didn't make the money that that I know our Lionsgate was hoping for.
Sure.
And all of us involved were hoping for. And I think part of it is that there was this thing of, first of all, I think the movie, and I thought the movie was great. I think Adam and Simon are some of the most talented dudes that I've ever worked with, and we worked on VHS together, VHS 2. So. Yes. We know them well. We're friends of theirs, But I think that the movie, once word started getting out that it was almost, kind of a reboot.
Yeah.
And it was still in that found footage. I think a lot of people were like, well, I'm not going to fall for that again. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people still have like this bad memory of going to the theater and, vomiting. Because, because, you know what I'm saying, man? Because we never thought it was going to be in the theaters, But I think Blair Witch did about an amazing job of like taking our story and updating it a little bit, but still kind of keeping the basic structure, and then then updating it with drones and all the latest kind of camera gadgetry. But as far as like found footage in general, I think there is a definite like. I know there's an audience that loves it. I mean, there's people that, love found footage movies, but I think also there's a big section of people that are just like, that never respected it in the first place, unfortunately, because I think it's, it's worthy of respect. There's a lot of really great found footage movies. But it's never gotten the respect that it's just like horror movies in general, man. We never get the respect we deserve. So I think that there's just kind of like people are just tired of it. And like I said, until there's like a new spark, you know what I mean? A new idea or a new way to do it. I still think it's a very viable way to do it. Like we just did a found footage episode of a TV show for, like I told, 12 Deadly Days. Our segment is found footage. There's still definitely like a use for it.
Yeah.
But I don't think, it's not the, back in the day it was like, oh, found footage will save us money and the kids love it and we don't have to hire, name actors and we don't have to light it, whatever it was. It's not that way anymore. I mean, I think that if a movie calls for it to be that way, I think you could still I still think there are a lot of great found footage movies to be made.
Yeah.
But I think right now, at least in my opinion, it's just time to kind of back off a little bit and see. And for me, it's like just see what somebody else comes up with.
Yeah. Out of interest, have you seen the movie The Tunnel at all? It was an Australian kind of found footage film.
I did see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did you think of that? Did you?
I really liked it.
Yeah,
I really liked it. I mean, it was, and I was in touch. Actually, autographed copy of the DVD. I was in touch. They got in touch with me years ago when they did it, and we lost touch since. We were we corresponded. I saw like an early cut of it. So, but I think that it was a really well done found footage movie, but I think that the whole thing of being in the tunnels for so much, it got a little too much. But I thought it was really really well executed, and one of the definitely probably the best one of that year. Well, that was like late 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So
I thought it was one of the better ones.
What do you think? What in your honest opinion do you think are the biggest or like the top 5 mistakes people make when they come to try and attempt to do a found footage film?
I think, the top, I could give you, and it really has a lot to do with just, general filmmaking rules. Like you still need a good story. You need good characters as much as you can, in found footage. I think that the problem with found footage is that you have to sneak in the character development.
Yeah.
In a really unique way, or else it comes off completely as just, really bad dialogue,
Yeah.
So it's very challenging to do that. I think that, my biggest thing about like bad found footage is when they overlight it.
Okay.
Like when they bring in, like now like Blair Witch was like, pretty much 100% real, like the way we shot it. Like there was no extra 12K, blasting light into the woods. There was no dolly moves. There was no steady cam. There's nothing. There was no crane shots or helicopters. Everything was basically shot by the actors. Like, it was a totally self-made movie. And now, obviously, as found footage has progressed, there is a technique where obviously you have to light the woods. I did a found footage a few years ago called Exist, with Bigfoot. Yes. You have to light the woods. I mean, you're not gonna, but also I'm not gonna pretend that that this footage is real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Found footage is just it's almost just it's just the style that we're shooting it in. So, I think that when you take it too far, because I think the found footage as a general rule, has to feel real, or at least attempt to feel real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that people are afraid to kind of look too low budgety. You know what I mean? And they kind of ruin things when it's just too much production value for a found footage movie. And then I just think that there are good stories to be told in found footage. I think it's and I think there are like stretches to I really loved what was it called, Apollo 18?
Yeah.
Or
go on.
I really liked that movie. Like, I liked it as a movie. I just the fact that they were shooting film and because that's what they a lot of that stuff they shot film, and the fact that the video was so I'm like, well, what technology are they using?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it was like almost like a movie that could have done found footage. Like, if they just look at the real cameras that they were using, and when they're shooting with the camera, you could go to that film, but otherwise just make it a regular film, because it doesn't. I mean, so my thing is, like, the technology didn't exist back in the day.
Yeah.
For this to happen, so I liked the movie, but I just kept knocking into that wall of, like, what? Who the hell is shooting this?
Yeah.
So you can't cheat that way. I mean, you can get away with it a little bit, but you can't just go and cheat. And then another movie that I really loved, which I actually thought worked great, found like Europa Report. I thought that was like a really, really very authentic and like a very like real way of doing a science fiction movie, in the found footage style. I thought that was it was done right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I just think so. I don't know if that was the top 5, but there are a few mistakes in there that people make.
Yeah. Cool. So let's look at I guess beyond Blair Witch Project for you, and you've there's been some kind of you mentioned Exists in there, but also Lovely Molly was a particular favourite of mine.
Thanks.
And I just love the creepiness that's conveyed throughout that movie. It just hits that kind of right tone. How important do you think it is for atmosphere to have that, the presence of atmosphere in a movie to kind of really sell what you're trying to convey?
Well, I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is everything. Like, I think that, when even in film school, like, even young filmmakers, like, the reason that some filmmakers, you can see from an early age are just gifted is that they somehow convey a sense of atmosphere, like of tone to their work. You know what I mean? And that's kind of it's a magical thing. It's just like something that you can definitely copy it. I think as a young filmmaker, and actually as even an old filmmaker, you're constantly being inspired by other filmmakers and by other films, and you're trying to do your own thing, But the idea of like having a tone, especially in horror movies, but in every movie, you know what I mean? Like I think that's the big difference between like amateur and professional. You know what I mean? Is that like if you're a good director, then you should be able to put a certain tone into the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously, some directors are better at some certain tones than others and stuff. But that's what it's all about, man. That's why you look like like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Like you can almost tell it's Alfred Hitchcock because he put this this tone into it. And same thing with Spielberg. All the greats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's really what it's all about, man. Like you somehow, and like something with Lovely Molly is that you've got to have the rhythm, the rhythm and the tone and the atmosphere. You got to have, even before you start writing, almost like you got to have that, and it changes throughout. It changes throughout the process. Even during the editing, you can change. You can sometimes change it, but you better have that tone, or else you just have a bunch of shots that are and then that's a lot. A lot of movies are. You're so right about that, because it's like a lot of movies about the atmosphere, the tone. Like they're great movies and they have great actors, and you're like, wow, that screenwriter did it, and that director, and for some reason it just doesn't work, and it's just like the tone, they just couldn't decide, or somebody fucked up, the tone, and it is an alchemy, man. There is this magical kind of thing that happens, and sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, wow, and then that's what you can tell, like gifted filmmakers, even at a low budget. You're like, wow, that was a really cheap movie, and the production design wasn't great, and the acting was a little whatever, but the tone was like so original, you know what I mean, or so unique, And obviously, I think you can get away with a lot of stuff if you just have that, But it's a very difficult thing to get. I think it's something that you get as you get more and more experience.
Sure. I mean, I wrote a word here in my notes about Lovely Molly. I put the word pulsates is what I kind of stuck with me, because it does. It pulsates as it goes through, and I think that's what quite really struck to me and was conveyed in a really, really cool way. And you were talking about people that have harnessed that kind of craft, and somebody that struck me as you were talking just then, who has definitely made a pathway for himself lately, is James Wan with his movies and The Conjuring and things like that. Like you're watching a James Wan movie now. Like he's very good with light and shadow in his films.
Yeah. He has a certain way of staging that creeps you out, and even though and that's the thing that's really amazing, is that you look at Insidious and Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2, and it's almost the exact same film.
Yeah.
But he's he knows, he's just really good at
that's right,
just twisting that shit and like you said, create this atmosphere where it just kind of creeps you the hell out. I just rewatched. I think I watched Conjuring 2, and then I rewatched Insidious and Conjuring 1 just to kind of see. Yeah. And you can kind of see some things where you're like, oh, he does that a lot. He does this a lot, and he does this, and so you learn, man. You learn from the masters, and I think there's a lot of really talented people out there making films, especially horror films.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I agree with you. The Conjuring. I was recently just rewatched Conjuring 2, and I thought the same thing in the comparison with Insidious when I was watching that. I mean, it helps that you got the same actor in both those movies, but there's a certain kind of plot line where in order to delve deeper into the.
So I'm sure that if you break it down, with like the story beats of like Blake's, like a Save the Cat, or they're probably really very, very, very identical movies. You know what I mean? And it's just a testament to his talent that he can make them exciting.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So you mentioned Exists as part of your kind of caliber of films that you've put out there. And again, this is touching on some of the found footage kind of territory that you've explored in the past. But what struck me about that movie is that it seemed to me look like you were humanising the creature in that film. So that there's a bit of empathy and pathos towards the creature. Is that not? Is that something that a subject that interests you, where something that's deemed evil or kind of dark and trying to kind of humanize that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like whenever you can do that in a horror movie or a thriller, it always, like there's, it always helps to humanize the villain, in some way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that for me, that it was a personal subject because I love Bigfoot. Like, he was my creature, when I was a kid.
Sure.
Legend of Boggy Creek, and and the Patterson Gimlin film. I mean, that like changed my life. It changed like the trajectory of my life. Like, because even to this day, I'm like, that's a damn good suit if it's a suit. You know what I mean? That's that was like late '60s. Like,
that's right.
That's a pretty damn good suit, man. So anyway, whether you believe it's real or not, like, I just loved everything about it, like the shakiness and the fact that he was on horseback, and it's just a beautiful piece of photography of like motion, whatever, even if it's real or not, whatever it is. So I always loved Bigfoot, and I always thought that like the horror and the terror that like Legend of Boggy Creek, the end, like the last act of Legend of Boggy Creek, and the Patterson Gimlin film, and like all the kind of Bigfoot documentaries that I've seen, like the horror that I felt, I've never felt that in a normal Bigfoot movie. Like, they either always, cheap out on the suit where it looks like a guy in a suit, or they make it CG where you're like, okay, that's just, or they make Bigfoot like have superhuman, like he's an alien, or they've never treated Bigfoot as like what I think it is, if Bigfoot exists, whether, obviously I'm not really, I don't know, I can't really answer that, but it's a missing link. It's a missing link that somehow survived, and now there was a lot more of them. But now the humans are basically, overpopulating the earth, and they have to move into, into smaller and smaller areas, and they're masters at like, just like not staying away from humans. You have to have a really good reason for a creature to go. So at the beginning of the movie, I set up this thing where, like, okay, I want there to be some motivation, even though it's very predictable, that for this creature to come back and fuck with these people. You know what I mean? And, and so it was very important for me to, like, that if Bigfoot is an offshoot of humanity, an old cousin of ours, distant, offshoot, then there should be some human, characteristics to this creature, because it's definitely more intelligent than the average animal. You know what I mean? So I just felt that for me, it was like very important to kind of give Bigfoot an arc, you know? And I was really excited because I didn't know how I was going to do that, because I had never seen it done on film before, and I had seen really like if you like good Bigfoot suits are pretty rare, you know what I mean? Like, it's not only a good suit, but you have to shoot it the right way, and you have to, edit it the right way. So that was my big challenge. And when I saw Brian Steele, who played the creature in that outfit, I was like, if we fail at conveying this, it'll be my fault, because they've given me all the tools.
Yes.
Like when I realized that I was going to be able to go in for a close up of the creature and it still hold up. Yeah. I was like, then I can do whatever I want. So that's really for me. Like, Exist is a really simple film that follows a lot of horror movie cliches. But that's one that I really wanted to kind of, I wanted to kind of structure the film around a very familiar setting, and then throw in a curve that, because most monsters, don't get any sympathy. You know what I mean? It was just very important that Bigfoot was not this like killing machine, because it doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Yeah. This is a creature that stays basically by itself and does not go near humans unless they're provoked, like any other person would be provoked. So,
you kind of reminded me of a little bit of going way back to James Whale's Frankenstein's monster, in a sense, where there's that kind of, I mean, in the tale of Frankenstein, that the real monster is obviously Frankenstein himself. But
Yeah, just something where, like the idea of, just, and it's a lot of, horror movies kind of play on this, and just the, the dumbness of humans, the folly of, of humanity, of just being, clueless and whatever, and then just nature kind of taking a little bit back, when it can, I think, those always make good stories,
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so I just also noticed in your credits that you worked on a few episodes from Dusk Till Dawn, the series. How much of that did you collaborate with Robert Rodriguez? Did he have much input or sway on your direction, or how did that come about?
Yeah, the first season, like he directed the first 2 episodes of the first season, and then I came in for the third one. And I don't know how I got that job, honestly, because I had never directed any television, and I had met Robert, but he called me like a year earlier and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this network, and it's going to be for kind of Latinos, and it's going to be called El Rey, and I want you to be a part of it." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm here, whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm bringing back Dusk Till Dawn, and maybe you could direct one of the episodes." And I was like, "Shit, dude, absolutely." So, when I got in there, I didn't realize that I was going to be the first director after Robert. So, and this is the first TV show that I had done. I mean, I had done indie films, but I was just, pretty nervous about how the hell does a TV set even work? You know what I mean? So he was involved early on. Well, in the first season, he was really involved. I mean, I think he was, almost day to day.
Sure.
And obviously, as the seasons have gone, he's gotten less and less involved. And he's doing a big movie now. So this last season, I did a show. I did one of the episodes, and he wasn't around at all. I mean, he was in Texas prepping. So, but early on, I think he came out to, just to see, make sure that I wasn't, fucking up. And I'm sure that that question came up with the AD, like, "Hey, is he fucking up?" Or but and Robert, it's Robert Rodriguez on his set in Austin, so he has a way of like kind of coming in and like taking over the attention of everybody, and it's his world. So if he wants to direct a few shots, he comes in and like takes over the camera sometimes, does the camera work. So he's just this larger than life guy who just works in a different kind of dimension than us people, us normal people. But he, but then once he realized that I was going to be all right, and the crew liked me, and I don't think anybody was kind of being alarmed at all about what I was doing. I was making my days, which is like the most important thing in television. Just try to make your damn days. So he left me alone, and he would come around every once in a while, and I think I saw him on the second season. He came around a couple times, but I think he just came by and did kind of the due diligence of making sure I wasn't fucking it up, and then left me alone.
Yeah, cool. I'm a big fan of that series, by the way. I like the original movies, the movie he did, and I was kind of intrigued about the series when it first came about, because I was like, where do you go with that, and that was what pulled me in. I was interested in. It's done really well, I think. So like looking ahead, like let's just complete the circle a bit with the Blair Witch. Like, would you? I mean, I saw that you kind of, and in the past you've talked about maybe looking at Rustin Parr. Going back to that world, particularly after the success of the film The Witch, which was earlier in the year. The same kind of time setting and stuff. And also, with that was more to do with Ellie Kedwood, but also your story of Rustin Parr as well. Are these two areas that you would think about looking back? If somebody kind of came to you and said, "Hey, we'll front up, a bit of cash for you to kind of go and explore these areas," would you consider? Oh
yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think Dan and me and Greg, who are still, we're still in the in the business. We're still trying to make a living in the film business. I don't think there's any time that that we would be like not completely uninterested in doing another Blair movie. It's our original mythology, and I think that there's still like one thing about the sequel not doing great is that they were gonna continue to make more movies, and
sure.
I don't know what they're gonna do now. I think they're just gonna probably put a lid on it for a little while. But I think there's hope. And I think we like Dan and I and Greg and the rest of the Haxon guys early on kind of made a plan for like if where would you want to do we want to take the Blair Witch franchise if there is one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good things to do, man. And the Witch, when I watched the Witch, I was like, that's almost like a trailer for the idea that we had about Ellie Kedward.
Yeah.
And it was a much different film though, which still kind of opens the door for that Ellie Kedward story. But and the same thing with Rustin Parr, like the idea of like I think doing like period, horror movies, as long as you keep it at a reasonable budget. I think it's just like I think people are I think it would be smart. Like I would be willing to take that risk. I think people there's a general sense in all of Hollywood and really all of entertainment of just staying safe. You know what I mean? Like if this succeeded, then do something that's similar. And I know that like period horror movies are not popular. You know what I mean? Like I don't think like we pitched the Blair Witch prequel a couple of times. First to Artisan and then to Lionsgate without much luck on either front. But I think that the idea of like something new has got to come along in horror. You know what I mean? And I think that and the Witch didn't blow up, but the Witch did pretty well for a kind of an arty film. And I think that if the Witch had done, because I think you could argue whether that was a horror movie or not. You know what I mean? Like, it was almost like a part fantasy. You know what I mean? Sure. Even though it had some really creepy ass stuff and some scary stuff in it. Yeah. But I think that if the Witch, when I wouldn't change anything about the Witch, I thought it was great. But if you could do something like that with a little more payoff to like the average horror customer. Yeah. And I'm not talking about like slasher or whatever, but just something that kind of give because even Braveheart, like Braveheart is a period movie, and you're like, okay, it's a great story, but the characters, like there was something about him and his wife, that you could feel, you could kind of put yourself in that place, and I think that if even with a period horror movie, I think if you could do that, if you could kind of give the audience somebody to kind of root for, and just gave a few more of those horror kind of beats that people are looking for, I think a movie like that would do pretty well. You know what I mean? But it's out of my hands. But if they ever come back and want to do another Blair movie, I would, and I would, help in any capacity.
So just to kind of tie up our kind of interview, what's next on the agenda for you? What have you got in the pipeline? Is there anything that you can kind of discuss with us? Or
I mean, we've had we've been developing some stuff for the last couple of years, and we've run into let's just say a couple of roadblocks with those projects, but we are quickly trying to fill up our calendars for next year. Sure. So we have a feature that we're developing that we hope to get off the ground with Blumhouse very soon. Okay. And then we are hoping to. Our big thing right now is to get into television, like get into more television. Okay, sure. I want to keep directing. Other people's shows, but eventually we'd like to get our own show going, and we got pretty close just recently with Stars, but it was a show that was based in Cuba, so now things are a little unsure about what exactly is going to happen with Cuba, and not just because of Trump, but because internally Cuba is a little bit of a mess right now with like kind of dealing with we'll see what happens with that. But that would be the ultimate thing for Greg and me is to have our own show and direct most of the episodes ourselves and write a bunch of them and like really kind of dig in on 8 to 10 episodes of something that we created. I think would be it'd be a dream come true for us. So that's our main goal right now. But we got always like 5 or 6 features in development and various stages here and there, and I'm just trying to find money and so just continuing to work it, man. But definitely moving toward television. I just think television is just much more interesting right now than movies. I think not to say that there aren't any great movies coming out, because obviously there are, but it's just you get a little more freedom on television, a little more room to breathe, and for movies right now, especially horror movies, you have to kind of keep them in this box. Yeah. And anything outside the box goes to VOD, or they just don't give it the proper kind of push. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are just frustrated with being limited by what is deemed a proper theatrical movie these days. Yeah, and I think a lot of them are moving those kind of unique ideas to television, which is they're just a little more open to experimenting.
Yeah. I'm just deviating slightly, just touching on, you were talking about Trump being elected and stuff, and politics and, society in itself always has a massive impact on storytelling itself. Like, what do you think, or how do you think the current political climate might shape film movie storytelling moving forward, because there's so much animosity out there?
Yeah, well, I think that, it's going to be interesting to see, but I think it's definitely going to impact everything, I think that, but I think what I think is, because I think there's I don't know if I would say censorship, but there's a certain amount of control that is trying to be, the country's definitely going to move into a certain direction that I'm not comfortable, that I don't want it to go in. But so I think that, and I think a lot of artists, a lot of filmmakers and actors, and just generally people, they're. I think most of them, is safe to say that they're liberal. They have liberal ideas, and so I think that I'm just really looking forward to seeing, what the reaction is, because there's already, I know there's already people doing stuff, but I think horror movies at the same time is it's a real interesting place to be as a horror filmmaker, because horror films have always kind of been like parables, or they're all, there's always this kind of undercurrent of political, what's political unrest or societal unrest or whatever's going on, and at the time, so I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing what a lot of these filmmakers, what road they take to kind of it's not really protest, but I guess it's just to kind of tell stories. I think we all have to kind of tell stories that are, our stories are more important than ever. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it's more important for us to kind of show an example, to give an example of, what we think, of what we think is wrong and right. You know what I mean? And it's just funny because, horror movies, like I said, they don't get the respect they deserve, but sometimes they're just, you're able to sneak things into horror movies and do these kind of analogies that you can't get away with a regular film. You know what I mean? So it's, it's going to be an interesting time. You know what I mean? But I definitely think it's going to have you can't help it, man. I mean, like, I wrote a script. Co-wrote a script a couple years ago called Maulers, and it was my kind of like reaction to like the crazy gun laws that we have here in the United States. And I haven't been able to get it financed. I think it's a good script, and it's got a lot, but it has like this political kind of baggage on it. But I think movies like that are are more important than ever. You know what I mean? And I think hopefully there's going to be some people out there who are able to cobble the money together or get a studio behind something that kind of has those that kind of trying to push the movement forward a little bit. Just kind of do the right thing with when it comes to our films. But so I don't know what the hell's going to happen, man. It's going to be a really interesting time. I think there's going to be a lot of pain, but I hope that there's also this new kind of generation. Like I have a 15-year-old daughter who next election she's going to be able to vote.
Sure.
And I love the idea that she really does not like Trump. Like she is morally So my hope is that this generation kind of pays attention because there are some things that are going to go wrong, and then in the next election they realize, shit, I can make a difference, and I can come out and I can vote for the person that I think is better than Trump. You know what I mean? If he does a bad job,
Yeah.
So it's a really exciting time, but it's a very scary time, man. We're all in shock.
Yeah. And I don't mean to end on a downbeat, but I do.
It helps to talk, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk this through.
Yeah. Look, I hopefully it paves the way for creativity, as you said, and people to kind of look into these areas that the film industry can kind of lend to kind of convey that voice and moving in exciting times in that direction. So with that, I wish you success in whatever bears fruit for you when you move forward. And I like the idea of a series. I think you're right. There's some exciting stuff out there that's being made. Anthology seems to be kind of the in word at the moment, which people are tapping into, which I think for a creator, I think that's exciting because it allows you to move into different pockets, So I think that's.
Because anthologies were dead for a long time, but the idea that you can reinvent, totally reinvent what happened. You can hate one episode and the next episode, it's going to be something completely different. You know what I mean? So it just helps you stay out of the box.
That's it.
When you can take more chances because well, if this doesn't work, next week we'll get them. You know what I mean? So it is an exciting time.
Yeah, man. All right, buddy. All right. I really appreciate this time and chatting. It's been awesome, and as I said, wish you all the success moving forward.
All right, cool, man. Thanks. Yeah, just let me know if you need anything else. I'm around.
All right, we'll do. Thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate your time. Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast, the Blair Witch franchise, the Eduardo Sanchez interview. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.